There are kings in history who go to war for land. They spill blood to redraw borders and expand their maps. There are others who kill brothers for a crown. They sacrifice family for power because a throne shows no mercy. But there was one king who did something different. He did not fight for territory. He did not murder his brother for the throne. He broke a religion for love. This was not a romantic story. It was not poetry. It was not the tale of a man following his heart. It was the story of a ruler confronted by his deepest fear. He did not create a new faith. He did not deny God. He did not tell people to abandon belief. Instead, he made a far more dangerous decision. He said, "Religion must obey me." This sentence sounds simple, but behind it was a radical idea. If God stands in the way of my power, then God's authority can be moved aside. This was not an act of faith. It was an act of control. And the consequences did not end with a marriage, or a single woman, or one royal household. That decision split a nation's religion, destroyed ancient institutions, led to executions, fear, and silence, and permanently reshaped England's future. This man was not just a king, he was Henry VIII, and his story is not really about 6 wives. It is about a question that still haunts history. When does power place itself above God? Was love the true cause, or only the excuse? How far can one man's fear drag an entire nation? This was never just a love story. This was power attempting to conquer the divine. When Henry VIII came to the throne, England did not just gain a new king, it gained hope. He had not been raised to rule. The crown was meant for his older brother. Henry grew up in the background, free from pressure, free from expectation. And perhaps that freedom shaped him. Young Henry was an athlete, a hunter, a musician, a poet fluent in multiple languages. He could wield a sword and play the lute with equal skill. He won tournaments, danced at court, and debated scholars. European courts looked at him and said, "This is the perfect Renaissance king." Henry was powerful, but not yet cruel. Ambitious, but not yet dangerous. He believed he was chosen by God. But that belief still carried humility, not arrogance. As King, Henry was a devoted Catholic. He wrote against Protestant reformers. He defended the authority of Rome. The Pope rewarded him with a rare title, Defender of the Faith. No one imagined that this same king would one day break from Rome entirely. Henry believed in marriage. His union with Catherine of Aragon was not merely political, it was sacred. He believed in order, in tradition, in divine guidance. But beneath that faith, a quiet fear began to grow. Henry understood one brutal truth: a strong king needs a male heir. Without a son, England could collapse into chaos. The dynasty could end. God's favor could be questioned. At first, the fear was invisible, unspoken, buried, but it was there. Young Henry was still hope, and history teaches us something cruel. Hope, when disappointed, often becomes obsession. For Henry VIII, power was never just about the present. It was about the future. He believed a king's strength was not measured by land or armies, but by blood. And blood in his world could only continue through a son. Henry knew English history well. He knew what happened when a king died without a clear male heir. Civil war, nobles turning on each other, a kingdom tearing itself apart. England had lived through that nightmare before, and Henry was determined it would not happen again. He told himself, "If I have no son, England is not safe." But this fear was not only political, it was religious. Henry believed God spoke to kings through success and failure, through victory and loss, through children. When God did not give him a son, Henry did not see biology. He saw judgment. His first wife, Catherine of Aragon, became pregnant many times, but the sons were stillborn or died shortly after birth. Only one child survived, a daughter. For Henry, this was not enough. In his mind, a female heir meant instability. A woman on the throne meant weakness. A son meant God's approval. Each failed birth deepened his fear. Each loss pushed him further from patience and closer to obsession. At night, Henry studied his family line. He imagined the Tudor dynasty ending with him. He imagined his legacy collapsing. And every time, he reached the same conclusion. If I fail as a father, I fail as a king. This is where everything changed. Fatherhood was no longer about love. Marriage was no longer about loyalty. Women became instruments of succession. If a woman could not produce a son, Henry believed she had failed God's purpose. And if God had rejected the marriage, then Henry felt justified in rejecting it too. This belief transformed his character. Patience disappeared. Suspicion grew. Mercy became weakness. Henry no longer asked, "What is right?" He asked, "What secures my line?" And that question led him to divorce. Divorce led him to defy the Pope. Defying the Pope led him to break with Rome. One missing child ended a marriage. One ended marriage shattered a religion, and one shattered religion reshaped an entire nation. Henry VIII never said, "I want to become a tyrant." He said, "I need an heir." But history shows us something dangerous. The greatest disasters often begin with fears that sound reasonable. For Henry, fatherhood was not love. It was state policy. And the cost of that obsession was paid by thousands of lives. Then Henry met a woman, Anne Boleyn. She was not obedient. She refused to become the king's mistress. She said, "I will be queen, or I will be nothing." For the first time in his life, Henry was told no, and it broke him. This was no longer love. This was a test of power. Henry wanted a divorce, but the Pope answered no. The Pope's answer was simple, no. And with that single word, centuries of religious authority began to crack. For Henry VIII, this was not just rejection, it was humiliation. He had been loyal to Rome. He had defended the Catholic faith. He had been called defender of the faith. And yet, when he asked for what he wanted, the church refused. At first, Henry tried to negotiate. He sent envoys. He sent letters. He applied pressure. But the answer never changed. No annulment, no exception, no compromise. And slowly the question stopped being about marriage. It became about authority. Henry began to ask himself, if I am king, why must I obey another man? If God chose me to rule England, why does Rome stand above me? This was the moment religion stopped being sacred and became political. Henry did not reject God. He did not reject belief. He rejected obedience. So instead of asking permission, he changed the rules. Henry declared that no foreign power had authority over England. Not the Pope, not Rome, not the church, only the crown. In a single decision, Henry placed himself at the top of the religious hierarchy. He became supreme head of the Church of England. This was not reform driven by faith. It was revolution driven by power. Monasteries were closed. Church lands were seized. Ancient religious institutions were destroyed. Those who resisted were branded traitors, not heretics, traitors. Because opposing the king's religion meant opposing the king himself. England did not wake up one morning and choose a new faith. It was commanded to accept one. Religion no longer answered to God first, it answered to the crown. And this is why the break mattered so deeply. Henry did not change religion to save souls. He changed it to secure control. What began as a personal desire became national law. One man's refusal to accept no reshaped an entire country. This was the moment faith bent to power. This was the moment the altar bowed to the throne. And once that line was crossed, there was no way back. Henry VIII got his marriage. He got his church. He got absolute control. But the cost was enormous. Faith became obedience. Love became fear. Power became law. Henry did not destroy religion. He claimed it. And history left us with a warning. When power refuses to accept limits, nothing is sacred.